Om. Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstanding arise amongst us. May there be only joy. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. So we're studying the life of Holy Mother, and the subhead at the end of this chapter is the divine drama. And contemplating this arose. The divine drama started a long, long, long time ago. There is something in the Vedas called the night of Brahma. Perfect entropy. No manifestation. The gunas are in complete equilibrium. There is only nirguna Brahman, Brahman without any attributes. And then something happens, completely ununderstandable to our finite minds, but in this infinite cosmic mind, suddenly Saguna Brahman arises, Brahman with attributes. And this Brahman with attributes thinks to itself, I am one, I shall become many. And the drama begins. The drama begins. Now this thought, this great thought, I am one, I shall become many, the gunas become out of equilibrium. They become disequilibrium. And so this continues for some time. And the projection of manifestation begins. It's called Maya. Maya, the illusion, the dream of something happening. There is only Brahman. Brahman with attributes, Brahman without attributes. And so Maya manifests, the first manifestation is something called Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is the cosmic egg in which these three gunas in their subtle form are slowly and slowly becoming more and more complicated, more and more intense, more and more interactivity among them. Sankhya explains this in some detail if you want to study it. And finally, it becomes so intense, it cannot be contained. And so it bursts forth. And at first, there is still only the subtle. There is no thing. The physicists call it plasma. It's intense vibration. What is intense vibration? Intense vibration is what we call heat, an unimaginably hotness. But that's all. There is no thing. Slowly and slowly and slowly it cools. Slowly and slowly over millions, hundreds of millions, billions of years, it cools. It's still cooling. And this explosive force, so to speak, it's flying further and further apart. But in the meantime, thingness begins. Thingness, manifestation, first particles, these tiny, unimaginably tiny particles in great fields. And out of these particles, slowly and slowly condense hydrogen. One electron, one proton, and you have the first atom. These atoms slowly fall together, slowly, because of the influence of gravity, which is tamas. And slowly they fall together and they become what's called by physicists a critical mass, and a star is born. One star, next star, many stars, billions of stars form. But they're simple stars. They're just hydrogen stars. But as they age, they become helium stars. And then they explode and they become neutron stars. But in their explosion, these novas, all of the other things that we think of as elements are born. And so slowly planets form, solar systems form. Some 4 billion years ago, it's said, 4+ billion years ago, our solar system formed. Now, the age of the universe, it is said, this age since this Hiranyagarbha released itself as plasma, that's 13.8 billion years ago. So about a third of that time, or a little less than that time ago, our solar system formed. And then the planets formed. And all of the influences. Now, our star and each star in our galaxy is very far apart. They don't affect one another much. As groups, they affect one another. But what really affects us in our solar system is the planets. Of the planets in the solar system outside the sun, 80% of the mass of the solar system is contained in the planet Jupiter. Just that one planet, 80% of the mass of the solar system. The Earth, very small percentage. But Earth began to teem with life. And consciousness formed what we call a subtle body. And that subtle body began to take forms. Your subtle body, the subtle body that is resident in you, had an amoeba form, had a fish form, had a reptile form. That's why you still have a reptilian brain. There is something in our nervous system, in our spinal cord, called the reptilian brain. It's because for millions of years, your subtle body was resident as a reptile. This is so awesome, so amazing. This is the divine drama that we're talking about tonight. And so finally, it comes down to what we think of as the kalpas, the ages of the earth, as they're spoken of in the Vedas. And each of the kalpas is made up of these yugas. The yuga of great purity, truth, ethereal, the Satyuga. And then out of that satyug, there becomes the desire to know duality. And so out of that golden age is born the silver age. And after a long time, the silver age ends. This is the drama of Rama and Ravana, as spoken about, as written about in the Ramayana. And the Bronze Age begins, the age of metals, the age of great struggles and fightings and killings and so on. But still, there's a lot of goodness, a lot of righteousness. But finally, that too degrades. And so we have the drama of the Mahabharata, and we have the drama of Krishna and his delivering the Gita to us. Here, if you want to know the truth, here it is, here's the truth. And so the truth is, he's saying, look, you are that subtle body, and yet even more within that, the Atman. But the subtle body goes from action and experience suit to action and experience suit. You were once in a reptile, a fish action and experience suit. Then you were in a reptile action and experience suit. God knows how many different action and experience suits you've had. Each of them accumulating experience, mental impressions, until finally we arrive in this Iron Age, the Kali Yuga, which Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Vivekananda, others say is ending. And so we are now in this transition. And so Sri Ramakrishna came. Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother and Vivekananda and Brahmananda and the others came to offer us the instructions, because this is the age, the Iron Age is the age of the Asuras. If you read the Devi Mahatmyam, as I did again this morning, if you read the Devi Mahatmyam, you see this is the age of the Asuras. There's very little righteousness left in the world. And Mother keeps having to push them back. It says, Mother, it is your nature to subdue the conduct of the wicked. The Asuras keep taking over. We can see it now. And Mother pushing back now. So this is the drama. This is the drama. I wanted to put what we're about to read in this context. It's a huge context. But for each of us, it is just being in this particular action and experience suit right now, so that we can experience all this and be part of the divine drama. And so that is the subhead that we'll be reading. And the Swami explains a lot about what we have been discussing as we read this chapter, what we have been discussing about the life of Holy Mother. So I'll pause after a bit for comments and questions, but I want to read this opening first of the divine drama. So this is the Swami now, Chaitanananda speaking. After reading this chapter, the reader might, After reading this chapter, the reader might quarrel. Oh, no, that's not right. The reader might wonder. After reading this chapter, the reader might wonder why Holy Mother endured all these trials. Why was this divine being surrounded by selfish, jealous, quarrelsome, and greedy relatives? She could easily have had a joyful and comfortable life in Calcutta with her wonderful devotees and disciples. The reader should remember that Holy Mother was acting in her divine drama. She needed both good and bad characters in her play. A drama cannot be interesting if there is no friction between good and evil. The more the hero or heroine of a play is opposed, persecuted, and ill-treated, the more that character shines and arouses affection in the audience. For example, when in a performance, Sita is abducted by Ravana, or
Shashana?
Say the name, please.
Dushashana?
Dushashan
Duryodhana.
publicly humiliates Draupadi. The viewers' love and sympathy wells up for Sita and Draupadi. And at the same time, they are filled with anger and abhorrence toward the villains. In her own drama, Holy Mother selected bad and worldly roles for some of her. Now listen, this is the Swami giving us his wisdom about why what happened. In her own drama, Holy Mother selected bad and worldly roles for some of her relatives and good and spiritual roles for her devotees, just as Ramakrishna had before her. We may remember Hazra, Sri Ramakrishna and Hazra. So that's the summary that the Swami gave about why Mother did and how willfully, how much it was her will, she being the mistress of the universe, the mistress of the gunas. She created this. So now with that preamble that was given about the drama from its beginning, a very short summary of how the universe began and how we came to be, subtle bodies, taking this action and experience suit and that one, until here we sit this evening. So any comments or questions at all about what's been said so far?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Sham.
What I want to ask you is, why did Holy Mother had to go to Jairam Bhatti at all?
Why she had to go to Jairambati at all? She actually loved going to Jairambati, Sham. That she was more comfortable there than she was in Calcutta. She loved the village life. The simplicity. She loved the simple villagers. She loved the simplicity of the life there. She said she felt like a caged bird in her rooms at Udbodhan. She felt like a bird in a cage. She was freer. We focused on these negative things that happen, but we have to think. If we think in our own lives, the unhappy, the unpleasant, the stressful, it's only a part of life. There's much that is not that. And Mother experienced that there. And she loved to have her children come and visit her there because she didn't have to wear a veil and she didn't have to be so circumscribed as she was in Calcutta.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for asking that question. That's a very good question.
Brother
Anyone else? Anything?
Chetna, Swami Chetanananda's preamble makes perfect sense to me.
Yes.
It does make perfect sense to me. That's exactly what I thought before you even came to this ending. I was thinking the same way. Because of these things happened, she shined more to us. We could learn a lot more from her. Tolerance, patience, these things happen in our families too sometimes.
Oh, yes.
Every family has a drama. There is a family drama. So, and how to deal with that, she exemplarily demonstrated to us how to deal with it with patience and tolerance.
She showed how to deal with it in love and tolerance and forbearance, yes.
Yeah.
And she occasionally was sharp, and
Yeah,
she occasionally lost her temper.
sure.
And
That's
she occasionally said, "You better not mess with me. You don't know who you're messing with."
sometimes we have to do that too.
Yes, exactly. We could really share her sense,
Yes,
the sense of life in this iron age,
this is the way life.
where so many of these negative attributes are more prominent.
That is true.
Mm. One of the things that happened as the Iron Age dawned some 54,000 years ago, we're told, is that the left brain became predominant. The left brain. There's a wonderful book called The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. The two sides of the mind
Yes,
were less um, the right mind. We lived more in the right mind in the earlier times, and the right mind heard the left mind as a separate voice. It didn't recognize it as part of itself.
Hmm.
And so we see this, as the author of that book points out, we see this particularly in the oldest epics of the Greeks, of the Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, and of course of India. It's a very different world that we see in the Rig Veda. Very different way of being and thinking.
I just have one question, Brother Shankara.
Yes, dear.
This yuga is Asura's age, but the Asuras existed in the past too, like Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, all the yugas. Asuras were there.
Well, the Asura consciousness,
Uh-huh.
the Asura consciousness is not so much there in the golden age.
I see.
The Asura consciousness arises in the beginning of the Silver Age.
Hmm.
It is because of the desire to know duality. Hang on just one second. My phone rang and I need to get rid of this. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
I should have turned off the ringer.
that's okay.
So yes, in the golden age, in the height of the golden age, we are ethereal beings.
Mm-hmm.
We're not quite embodied in the same way that we are now. This is what we're told, and certainly this is what's described in the book of Genesis, that Adam and Eve, before they desired to know duality, before they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, duality, were ethereal beings. They weren't aware of their bodies. They didn't have bodies in the sense that we think of bodies. So they weren't. It was when they became when they became knowledge, they became aware of the knowledge of good and evil, that they became embodied and they became aware of their immodesty. So, as they say, they covered themselves with fig leaves and so on. And of course, this is all metaphorical,
Yeah.
but I think that there's reason to think that there is a deep meaning in this time of being ethereal. And then if we read about the Silver Age, the age of Brahma, it didn't begin with Ravana. It ends with Ravana.
Yeah.
It began in a very sweet state. Hmm? Even the Bronze Age at the beginning was there was a great emphasis on righteousness, a great emphasis on but then slowly and slowly it degraded to where we have the Kauravas plotting and scheming against the Pandavas,
Yes.
who are the symbolic family of the remaining righteousness, and entrapping them.
That's right.
And so finally, Krishna comes to the rescue.
Yeah.
But even that, as we know, doesn't last. The Bronze Age comes to a very sad end with the Krishna's clan itself, the Vrishnis, fighting among one another. And another great correction taking place where Krishna's capital city is inundated in the Great Flood.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Great explanation.
So, anything else from anyone before we go on? This is really good that we're getting these things talked about, because to understand Holy Mother's life, we have to understand the background. It's not something that happens in isolation. Okay. Chapter 21, Pilgrimage in South India. Yudhishthira to Vidura. Vidira? Somebody say that word.
It's Vidura.
Vidura. Okay. Yudhishthira to Vidura. This is from Bhagavad Gita. Well, it says it's from the Bhagavad Gita,
It's
but
really Mahabharata.
yeah, right. O great one, lovers of God like you, having yourselves risen to the height of holiness, sanctity, the holy places by your visits, having risen to the height of holiness, sanctify the holy places by your visit, bringing the presence of Narayana, who resides in you. Travel breaks the monotony of daily life, drawing people to explore new places, new people, new cultures, and new languages. Spiritual pilgrims are a special type of traveler. They seek to breathe the freshness of the eternal. Pilgrims travel to broaden their outlook and education, destroy their self-centeredness and narrowness, eradicate their physical lethargy and mental laziness, and enhance their love and hunger for God. They get They get inspiration from the saints and sages who have resided in the holy places they visit. And they also come in contact with many other seekers of God. The ancient sages remind us that all people are pilgrims and that this world is but a temporary place for pilgrimage. That was what was being alluded to earlier. We've had many. We've traveled such a long road of embodiedness, not all of it human, only fairly recently human. Again, I'll say, for any of you who want to read a very poetic explanation and evocation of this, read the last few pages of Swami Vivekananda's chapter 4 of Raja Yoga, his book Raja Yoga, where he talks about what it is that we have been doing and how it unfolds and how it ends. So the world is a temporary place for pilgrimage. We must live here as pilgrims without worldly attachments and must always go onward toward the goal, as Jesus Christ said in his shortest teaching, be passers-by, be passers-by. Pilgrims understand this. The world is a bridge. Pass over it, but build no house upon it. I'm going to repeat that. We must live here in the world. This is Swami Chetanananda speaking now. We must live here in this world as pilgrims without worldly attachments and must always go onward toward the goal. Pilgrims understand this. The world is a bridge. Pass over it, but build no house upon it. The longest journey is the journey to the inmost self. Holy Mother had completed her inward journey when she was young, but after the Master's passing away, she began to travel in India to distribute her spiritual treasures, It had not been possible for Ramakrishna to travel far because he was in an ecstatic state most of the time. And there were places he couldn't go because he's like Gaia. He said, if I went there, I'd leave the body. I can't go. It had not been possible for Ramakrishna to travel far because he was in an ecstatic state most of the time. Generally, people go on a pilgrimage to purify themselves and attain virtue. But spiritual giants like Holy Mother and the Master went to purify the places of pilgrimage and make them holy. When sinners bathe in the Ganges, the goddess Ganges absorbs their sins and makes them pure. However, when holy people bathe, she gains virtue and gives back peace and bliss. Holy Mother was so pure that the redeeming power of the Ganges, Yamuna, Sarayu, Lake Pushkar, and Godavari increased 100-fold when she bathed in those holy waters. Holy Mother was so pure that the redeeming power of these holy rivers and lakes increased 100-fold when she bathed in those holy waters. Holy Mother traveled from Hardwar in the north, at the foothills of the Himalayas, to Rameshwaram, is it Rameshwaram? Rameshwaran in the south, on the coast of the Indian Ocean, and from Rajasthan's Lake Pushkar in the west to Puri in the east on the Bay of Bengal. She traveled throughout India, covering Andhra Pradesh,
Yes.
Bihar, Karnataka, Orissa, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, and West Bengal. In June, now this is a lot of traveling. We don't think of Mother as traveling that much, but she did. In June 1909, shortly after Holy Mother moved to Udbodhan House, her new Calcutta residence, she was laid up with chickenpox. After her recovery, she stayed in Calcutta a few months, and then on 16 November, she went back to Jairambati. Over a year later, in July 1910, she was still feeling unwell. Krishna Bhavani, Balaram's wife, asked Holy Mother to visit Kotar in Orissa, where her family owned an estate. She hoped that the change of climate would restore Holy Mother's health. Holy Mother agreed and left Calcutta on 5 December 1910, accompanied by Golap Ma, Radhu, Surabala, Swami Atmananda, Swami Dhirananda, Ashu, and Krishna Bhavani and her sister-in-law, Nita's mother. What is that word? Shantiram? Premananda's brother. Shantiram, Premananda's brother, reserved a second-class compartment for the women and bought interclass tickets for Holy Mother's attendance. The train arrived at the Badrak station close to midnight, and Balaram's son, Ram, along with Premananda's brother Tulsiram, received Holy Mother and her party and took them to their Patak residence. They rested there that night, and in the morning the women left for Kotar by palanquin. They reached there by noon after covering nearly 16 miles. Later, the monks and devotees came with the luggage by bullock cart. So the subhead is now about Mother's stay in Kotar, at Kotar in Orissa. Balaram's family was wealthy, and they owned a lot of property and farmland in Orissa. Their Kotar estate had a large house at the back of the property and an office compound in the front. The mother and her women companions lived in the house, and the men lived in the office quarters. The house had 17 rooms and a garden behind it. Near the house, there is a big pond named Krishna Sagar, the ocean of Krishna, surrounded by trees. Holy Mother bathed in this pond during her stay in Qatar. So I wonder if that pond still exists. Balaram's family members were Vaishnavas, and they had a Radhasham temple in Kotar. Apart from the daily worship, they observed various festivals and held yatra performances in the front hall of the temple, which neighbors and people from other villages attended. Holy Mother attended the Saraswati Puja. Now, let's just be mindful that Mother herself, according to Sri Ramakrishna, was an embodiment, an incarnation of that aspect of the divine feminine we know as Saraswati, the goddess of learning, music, self-expression of all kinds, science, So she attended how appropriate that she attended the Saraswati Puja. As part of the festivities, two young boys acted in the roles of Krishna and Radha. They sang and performed a folk dance called, somebody say those words, please. They performed a folk dance.
Guti
Yeah, go ahead.
Ponak.
Guti Ponak.
Uh-huh.
They performed a folk dance called Guti Panak, which Holy Mother and her companions enjoyed so much that another performance was given the next evening. Now that's really something. Let's just pause and ponder that. You know, it was these children did so well. Partly, I'm sure, because of the radiance of Holy Mother that they were in. But Holy Mother enjoyed it so much that another performance was given the next evening. The following day, the image of Saraswati was immersed in the family pond. On the day of Saraswati Puja, Holy Mother initiated Ramakrishna Basu, Balaram's son, and his wife. How auspicious was that? Devendranath Chattopadhyay, the local postmaster, had in his youth converted to Christianity in order to marry a Christian girl. The marriage did not last, however, and the girl soon left him. Repentant, Devendra desperately wanted to return to his Hindu religion, but none gave him any hope. When Holy Mother arrived at Kotar, Devendra talked to Ashu and other monks about his situation. When Ashu and Ram placed the matter before Holy Mother, she agreed to initiate Devendra on the day of Saraswati Puja. Oh, can you imagine his relief? Can you imagine his joy? Oh. According to the mother's suggestion, on the previous day, the priest of the Radha Shyam temple performed an expiatory ritual for Devendra, who shaved his head, drank chanamrita, sanctified. Is that right? Chanamrita?
Charanamrita.
Chanamrita, sanctified water from the temple, and received the sacred thread and the Gayatri mantra from Swami Dhirananda. The next day, Holy Mother initiated him and presented him with a cloth. Now, let's just pause and think a moment. Once again, this is Mother's great Catholicity, her great broadness. This poor man who had done something perhaps incautious in his youth that didn't work out, wanted to return to his heritage, and no one would permit it. No one would give him any encouragement. The moment Holy Mother heard about it, the moment she had heard about it, she said, let him be initiated on Saraswati Puja itself. So she gave him initiation and a cloth. This is so significant because the cloth, as Mahatma Gandhi pointed out, the cloth of India is very significant. It is part of the heritage. Thus blessed by the mother, Devendra was accepted by the Hindu community, and he shared prasad with the assembled devotees. Kotar is a rural place with a scenic and quiet ambience. Holy Mother lived there for 66 days, and her health improved significantly. She felt relaxed and moved around the village freely, as if it were in Jairambati. So this is what I talked about earlier. Mother loved that village life because she she felt so comfortable there. She didn't feel constrained by all of the conventions and rules of city life. And again, this is why we don't know just exactly how many disciples Mother had. The Swami would have said if it could be found out, but he says instead, Holy Mother initiated quite a few people in Kotar. If he could have determined how many people that was, he would have given us the number. But this is why we don't know how many people, how many devotees, how many disciples Mother had. And because she would do this, and no one was keeping count, no one was keeping a record. So she initiated quite a few people in Kotar. During the Christmas season, she initiated 3 devotees who had traveled to Kotar from Shillong. One of her disciples noticed that Holy Mother was a vegetarian. One of her disciples noticed that Holy Mother was a vegetarian. In other words, even as a Bengali, she didn't eat fish. So he also gave up eating fish and meat. When she encouraged him to resume his old habits, the disciple referred to her own vegetarianism. The mother replied, "Do you think that I eat only through one mouth? Don't be foolish. I am asking you to eat fish and meat." As I've said many times about these books, about these holy ones, this is instruction to us. You don't need to be too doctrinaire about these things. If it's your heritage and your wish to be a strict vegetarian, fine. But listen to what your mother says. I say your mother because that's what she said. Remember, you have a mother. I am your real mother. She said, "Do you think that I eat only through one mouth? Don't be foolish. I am asking you to eat fish and meat." The disciple obeyed her. A young man from Cuttack named Vaikunta visited Holy Mother at Kotar at the behest of his eldest brother, who worked for Ramakrishna Basu's estate. Although his brother was a devotee, Vaikunta did not know much about Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. When Ram introduced Vaikunta to the mother, he simply bowed down to her and left for home after lunch. However, now I'm going to repeat that just to make the point. He didn't know much about Holy Mother and Ramakrishna. When Ram introduced Vaikunta to the mother, he simply bowed down to her and left for home after lunch. However, divine grace dawns on pure souls. Vaikunta soon felt a deep longing to see the mother again, so he returned to Kotar and stayed for a few days. When he went to Holy Mother to take leave, she asked him to stay another day. After a while, the mother's attendant told him she wished to bestow grace on him. The attendant asked him to bathe in the morning and to keep himself ready. Radu called Vaikunta the next morning. When he went to the mother's room, she asked him to sit down and asked, "Will you accept initiation?" Vaikunta replied, "If you are pleased, kindly give it to me. I know nothing about it." So this was the mother's initiative. She drew him back to her. He felt this longing to see her. Clearly, that was her will at work. And then she offered him initiation, and he said, If you are pleased, kindly give it to me. I know nothing about it. Holy Mother selected a suitable mantra and gave him initiation. Vaikunta asked, Mother, can one accept another guru to learn yoga? Now again, let's listen up here because this is instruction for us. Vaikunta asked, Mother, can one accept another guru to learn yoga? She replied, yes, you may have teachers to learn other things, but you should not have another mantra guru. So once you've taken Diksha, mantra, you should not have another mantra guru. But other teachers for other things, upagurus for those things, that's fine. So there's 10 minutes left in the hour. Are there any questions or comments that anyone would like to make? Anything at all? Okay, I'll go on reading. The mother poured her love and affection on this young man. When he was leaving, the mother gave him some sweets to eat on the way and asked him not to eat food from the market. So she gave him something to eat to sustain himself and asked him not to eat food from the market. Why? Because the influence of that food would have detracted from what she had just given him. That's why. At Kotar, the mother experienced various spiritual moods. One day, Ashu found her seated alone. Her eyes were open, but she was completely oblivious to her surroundings. After some time, her eyes fell on Ashu, who had been waiting there for 15 minutes. Holy Mother remarked, I don't like to be confined to my room all the time. So when everyone else rests after lunch, I sit in this solitary place. In Calcutta also, she sometimes sat alone on the roof of the Udbodhan place. The mother was in an exalted mood. She began to speak. Is there no end of this coming to the world again and again? Where there is Shiva, there is Shakti. Shiva and Shakti incarnate again and again to deliver human beings from the bondage of Maya. As the same moon rises again and again, so the same God incarnates to look after his own creation and beings. The master practiced austerities and suffered for others. It is all his play. The master was a kalpataru, a wish-fulfilling tree. Those who sincerely seek him find him. Sometimes I see the master has become everything. I see the master in whatever direction I look. I see him in the blind and in the lame. He has become every being. The beings are not suffering. It is he who is suffering. So whenever people cry to me, I rush to deliver them. Here people ask me to sleep. How can I sleep? I think the time I shall spend in sleeping is better spent doing japa that will benefit human beings. The other day I saw that Radu was about to kill an ant. I stopped her. I saw the master in that ant. At any rate, how many people can I see? The master left the responsibility for all on me. It would be nice if I could look after everyone. Now I'm going to go back and read that all again with the understanding that Mother is present in her subtle body. So if we cry to her, she is available to, may even rush to us. I'm going to read what that she said again. Mother began to speak. Is there no end of this coming to the world again and again? Where there is Shiva, there is Shakti. Shiva and Shakti incarnate again and again to deliver human beings from the bondage of Maya. As the same moon rises again and again, so the same God incarnates to look after his own creation and beings. The master practiced austerities and suffered for others. The master practiced austerities and suffered for others. O merciful, if we take any hold upon God in our prayer, it is by thy grace alone, since all thine austerities were practiced for our sake. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. The master practiced austerities and suffered for others. It is all his play. The master was a kalpataru, a wish-fulfilling tree. Those who sincerely seek him find him. Sometimes I see the master has become everything. I see the master in whatever direction I look. I see him in the blind and in the lame. He has become every being. The beings are not suffering. It is he who is suffering. So whenever people cry to me, I rush to deliver them. Here, people ask me to sleep. How can I sleep? I think the time I shall spend in sleeping is better spent doing japa that will benefit human beings. The other day, I saw that Radhu was about to kill an ant. I stopped her. I saw the master in that ant. At any rate, how many people can I see? The master left the responsibility for all on me. It would be nice if I could look after everyone. Anything at all? Any questions or comments?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, I am.
So, when Mother saw Sri Ramakrishna in all these other beings, including the ant, did she see the physical form of Sri Ramakrishna, or did she feel him, or what exactly do you think?
Sometimes she would see the form. Sometimes she would just see the subtle body, the presence, the living presence. Very good question. She would see sometimes. She would see both. Not always both at the same time, but she would see either. And so she was very much of course, Mother's vision, we can't even begin to think what that must be like. But we can definitely cry to have some sense, some feeling. And this is, I'll repeat to you what Swami Prabhavananda said. The chosen ideal, which is that being that is at the center of the mantra that you are given by your guru, by your Ramakrishna order guru. The chosen ideal is you yourself, no different. And then he said these words, learn to feel that living presence. So he didn't call on all of us to see it. He just said, learn to feel that living presence. And so Mother was feeling that living presence of Sri Ramakrishna in whatever she looked at. The divine presence, Shiva.
So
Anything
that
else?
feeling would be some kind of energy, or what would the feeling feel like?
After practicing japam for some time, you will have a sense at your heart level. It's not your physical heart, it's your heart chakra. You will have a feeling there. It starts as a kind of warmth, a glow. Then it becomes more and more intense. And for those people who practice visualization, they may actually see the divine presence in the form of their Ishtadevata, their chosen ideal, seated in the lotus of their heart. Some people will hear his or her voice. Some people will hear a music playing like Krishna's flute, or a drum like tabla. Very beautiful, very beautiful, compelling, absolutely holds your attention. That's its intention. Now, this doesn't happen right away, but that warm glow, that feeling, that warm glow will start soon. Does that make sense to you, Swayam?
Yes, Brother Shankara, thank you.
And it intensifies. Over time, it intensifies until it becomes the most important thing in your life. Everything else has a secondary importance. And you begin to understand what Krishna meant when he said in chapters 3 and 4 of the Gita, offer everything to me. So you have this sense of offering everything to that living presence within you. That all of your life is an offering. Everything, everything, without exception, no exceptions, everything. That's what Holy Mother meant when she says that she saw him in everything and doing everything. It is all him.
I do have a follow-up question.
Please.
If one is able to sort of live in a meditative state even when awake, like having the mantra going on and doing the actions but keeping the mind on the ishta, then can this feeling, the presence, happen even when you're doing your actions, or does it only happen when you're doing meditation?
No, it comes and goes at all times, particularly when your attention goes to it strongly. This is one of the reasons for offering everything. If you deliberately offer everything, then your attention immediately goes to that, and so your prana goes to that, and so it activates that feeling. But as Sri Ramakrishna said, you cannot keep your voice always on the highest note. even Sri Ramakrishna, and Holy Mother, they weren't always in that samadhi in which they were not present, so to speak, to their physical being. Within us, until that time happens when we attain that highest level of samadhi, savikalpa samadhi, never mind nirvikalpa, that's not something we can really talk about. But when we attain savikalpa samadhi, that's when we understand that we are that we are that, and there's just this little tiny sense of separation. Like you cut us, if you're looking down at the round pie, and you've cut a slice out of the pie, there's just this little thin separation between the slice and the rest of the pie. But the slice, until you take it out, is still a part of the pie. And that's how you feel in Savikalpa Samadhi. Everything else is pushed to the periphery. And so, metaphorically speaking, the divine presence is that entire pie, and you see that you are part of that. And it is an ecstatic state, but you can't keep your attention always there. So, but once that's happened, then it's always accessible to you. There's the memory of it, and the feeling that was there is always available to you. As I said, dear, if you want to understand this more deeply, read the last 2 chapters of the Vivekachudamani. And I suggest you read Swami Prabhavananda's translation and commentary on the Vivekachudamani. It's very plain, straightforward translation into English. It's very easy to understand of what Adi Shankaracharya said, because the Swami understood it thoroughly.
Thank you.
Anything else, dears? Okay. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. Perfect, whom lust could not taint, nor passion nor gold draw near, O Master of all who renounce, fill our hearts full of love for thee. Thou hast finished with fear and with doubt, standing firm in the vision of God, refuge to all who have cast fame, fortune, and friends away. Without question thou shelterest us, and the world's great sea in its wrath seems shrunk to the puddle that fills a hoofprint in the clay. Speech cannot hold thee, nor mind, yet without thee we think not nor speak. Love, who art partial to none, we are equal before thy sight. Taker away of our pain, we salute thee though we are blind. Come to the heart's dark cave and illumine, thou light of the light. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om. Om Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. May you go in Mother's loving and protective embrace. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. So until next time, tomorrow night we'll be studying Swamiji's Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga. And then of course on Saturday we'll talk about another one of Swami Prabhavananda's talks from the book Realizing God. And then on next Sunday there'll be a talk, and I've forgotten actually what the topic is.
Month of Raja Yoga, right, Brother Shankara? December?
No, December is Jnana Yoga.
Oh, it is Jnana.
We've just been finishing. We're just finishing. Well, we just finished because today is December 1st. So we've finished with Raja Yoga the last month.
I see.
This is now Jnana Yoga, but I just don't recall this moment what the topic is. You can find it online.
Yeah, we will. Thank you so much.
And Robert Ayers, if you're still there listening, I will see if I can put you and Cindy together and see if there can't be some concert, perhaps associated with the Christmas season. The two of you, that would be delightful. All right, dears.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Great,
Wonderful reading, Brother Shankara. The content of the book is so wonderful.
isn't it? Isn't Swami Chaitanananda is
He's
just
done, yeah, he's done some really, really extraordinary work. And all his books, in fact, all his books.
Oh yes, absolutely.
It's wonderful, just wonderful.
Yes, he started this
Nectar.
in 1975. His first book was published. It was on meditation. I forget the exact title. It was just a little paperback. His first book was published in 1975 in Hollywood. So, dears, good night. And
See you tomorrow night, Brother.
I say that, Shailesh, to let you know he's been practicing his craft a very long time.
Yeah, yeah. It's all his books have been so influential on me, specifically like Ramakrishna, as we saw him, and then
Right.
God, they lived with God, and then God lived with them, and then divine play of Ramakrishna, and now Sri Sarada Devi, her divine play.
And if any of you want to read it's a great thick book because there's so much to tell, that much of which wasn't known before. He mined it out because he's such a good miner of this information. The book on Girish Ghosh.
Yeah.
It's 3 inches thick. It's a remarkable book. The book about Girish Ghosh. So much information that isn't in the gospel. It isn't elsewhere. But the Swami mined it out from here and there. And again, the Swami is one of those who he won't publish anything that he doesn't know.
Well, yeah.
His heart is true. No, none of that fairy tale telling. Not that fairy tale telling is in itself bad, as long as we know it's a fairy tale.
Correct. Yeah, maybe sometime later. I've seen the book.
Yeah. As Einstein said, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. Why? Because it stimulates their imagination, stimulates their sense of fantasy and possibility. All right, then. Until tomorrow night, dears.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Good
Thank
night.
you for keeping me in your mailing list. I'm Girija from Las Vegas.
Hello, Girija. Well, of course, we'll keep you on our mailing list. We're so
Yes,
glad to
I'm
have you join
attending.
us.
Yes, thank you. Good night.
Good night, dears. Good night.
Good night.